When you picture a celebrity jet, you probably imagine something the size of a hotel lobby. But not every star wanted that. Some of the biggest names in history flew private for a fraction of what you'd expect. And today, we're breaking down the 8 cheapest private jets ever owned by celebrities, starting with a king who did it first. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next celebrity secret we uncover. Elvis Presley. Lockheed Jetstar. Before private jets were a celebrity flex, Elvis Presley was already living the dream. In 1976, he purchased a Lockheed Jetstar, one of the earliest business jets ever built, originally designed for the U.S. Air Force back in the 1950s. The Jetstar wasn't cheap when it was new, but by the time Elvis got his hands on one, the model was already considered outdated technology compared to newer jets hitting the market. That's exactly why it fit his budget. Elvis reportedly paid around $840,000 for the aircraft, a number that sounds massive until you compare it to what modern private jets cost today, easily tens of millions of dollars for anything comparable in size. He named it the Hound Dog 2, after his own hit song, and had it customized with a red, white, and blue paint job, plush leather seating, and gold-plated seatbelt buckles. It became one of 2 personal jets he owned, the other being the far more famous Lisa Marie, named after his daughter. The Jetstar had 4 engines mounted at the rear of the fuselage, a design choice that made it fast and capable of flying above most weather systems, something Elvis valued given how much he toured. It could carry around 10 passengers and had a range of roughly 2,000 miles, enough to hop between concert cities without constant refueling stops. What made the Jetstar an affordable entry point into private aviation wasn't just its age. It was mass-produced by Lockheed, meaning there were plenty on the used market by the mid-1970s, and maintenance costs, while still high for the average person, were manageable for someone with Elvis's income. Today, this exact same aircraft is preserved and on display, a piece of aviation history tied directly to the king of rock and roll. Frank Sinatra. Learjet 23. Frank Sinatra didn't just enjoy flying, he helped make private jet ownership something everyday millionaires could actually consider. In the mid-1960s, Sinatra purchased a Learjet 23, one of the very first models to roll off Bill Lear's production line. The Learjet 23 was revolutionary for one simple reason: it was small, fast, and dramatically cheaper to buy and operate than the corporate jets before it. Prior to the Learjet, private aviation was dominated by converted military aircraft or large, expensive corporate planes. The Learjet 23 cost around $550,000 brand new, a price point that suddenly made private flying accessible to entertainers, not just oil executives and airline owners. Sinatra's jet could seat up to 8 passengers and cruise at speeds over 500 miles per hour, which was faster than most commercial airliners of that era. For a man constantly moving between Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and New York for shows, recordings, and film shoots, that speed translated directly into more time actually working and less time in transit. What's often overlooked is that Sinatra wasn't just a customer. He became something of an unofficial spokesperson for the brand. His visibility flying in and out of Learjets helped cement the aircraft's reputation as the plane of choice for the entertainment elite, well before Learjet became a household name synonymous with private aviation itself. The Learjet 23 was compact by today's standards, roughly the size of a large SUV cabin when it came to interior space, but it didn't need to be big. It needed to be efficient, and that's exactly what made it one of the cheapest true private jets ever flown by a major celebrity. Arnold Palmer. Learjet. Arnold Palmer wasn't just golf's biggest star for decades. He was also one of aviation's most dedicated celebrity pilots. Unlike most people on this list, Palmer didn't just own a private jet, he flew it himself, and he did it in a Learjet. Palmer became a certified pilot in 1956 and eventually flew several different Learjet models throughout his life, including early versions similar to the Learjet 23 and 24 series that Sinatra and Travolta also flew. These jets typically cost between $500,000 and $900,000 depending on the model year and condition, keeping them well below the price tag of the larger corporate aircraft favored by other athletes and business figures of the time. What set Palmer apart wasn't the aircraft itself, it was how he used it. He flew himself to golf tournaments across the country and internationally, logging an astonishing number of flight hours over his lifetime, reportedly surpassing 20,000 hours in the cockpit. In 1976, Palmer even set a world record flying a Learjet 36 around the globe in just under 58 hours. Though that record-setting aircraft was a step up from his earlier, more modestly priced jets, his early Learjets gave him something money alone couldn't buy: control over his own schedule. As a professional athlete competing in tournaments worldwide, being able to pilot himself directly to a course, skip commercial layovers, and manage his own timeline gave Palmer a competitive edge most golfers of his era simply didn't have. Palmer's relationship with aviation ran so deep that an airport in Latrobe, Pennsylvania was eventually renamed in his honor, cementing his legacy as much for his flying as for his golf swing. Brad Pitt, Cirrus. Brad Pitt's approach to private aviation looks nothing like the Hollywood stereotype. Instead of a Gulfstream or a custom Boeing, Pitt opted for a Cirrus, a single-engine propeller aircraft built for personal use rather than luxury travel. Cirrus aircraft, depending on the exact model, typically range from $500,000 to just over $1 million new, a fraction of the cost of the private jets owned by many of his peers. What makes Cirrus planes stand out isn't just the lower price tag, it's the safety technology built into every model. Cirrus aircraft come equipped with a whole airframe parachute system, meaning in an emergency, the entire plane can deploy a parachute and descend safely to the ground. Pitt has been open about his interest in flying as a personal pursuit rather than a status symbol. Owning a Cirrus fits that mindset perfectly. It's a plane built for someone who wants to actually fly, not just be flown. These aircraft are popular among private pilots precisely because they combine modern avionics, a comfortable cabin, and a manageable price point that doesn't require an aviation department to manage. Unlike the larger jets on this list, a Cirrus isn't designed for cross-country business trips packed with staff and equipment. It typically seats 4 to 5 people and has a range of around 1,000 miles, making it better suited for personal trips, weekend getaways, or simply the enjoyment of piloting an aircraft himself. Pitt's choice reflects a broader trend among certain celebrities, using private aviation not as a display of wealth, but as a genuinely personal hobby, one where a Cirrus offers nearly everything they need without the price tag of a jet 10 times its size. John Travolta, Learjet 24. John Travolta is arguably the most famous celebrity pilot in the world, holding certifications to fly commercial airliners, and his passion for aviation started decades ago with something far smaller and more affordable than the jumbo jets he's known for today. Early in his flying career, Travolta owned and flew a Learjet 24, a compact twin-engine jet that shared the same lineage as the aircraft flown by Sinatra and Palmer. The Learjet 24 typically sold for somewhere between $600,000 and $900,000 depending on the year and configuration, keeping it firmly in the affordable range for a working actor who had just found major success. Travolta earned his pilot's license in the 1970s, right around the time his career exploded with films like Saturday Night Fever, and aviation quickly became more than a hobby. It became a defining part of his identity. The Learjet 24 was known for its speed and its no-frills cockpit, requiring genuine skill to operate compared to the more automated aircraft of today. For Travolta, that was part of the appeal. He wasn't just buying a status symbol, he was buying entry into a world of aviation he'd fly in for the rest of his life, eventually working his way up to piloting Boeing 707s and 747s, something almost no other celebrity has ever achieved. What's fascinating is how this early, relatively cheap Learjet set the trajectory for everything that followed. Travolta has said in interviews that flying gave him a sense of control and calm that nothing else in his life provided, and it all started with a jet that cost less than many people's homes today. His later collection would include far more expensive aircraft, but the Learjet 24 remains the foundation of one of Hollywood's most genuine aviation careers, not a purchase made for image, but the first step of a lifelong passion. Vince Neil, Learjet 35A. Vince Neil, frontman of Mötley Crüe, brought the same excess associated with 1980s rock and roll into the sky, but even his choice of aircraft, the Learjet 35A, was surprisingly reasonable by celebrity standards. The Learjet 35A was one of the most popular business jets ever produced, with over 700 units built, which kept used prices relatively low on the resale market, often landing between $1 and $2 million depending on age and avionics upgrades. For a touring rock band constantly moving between cities on tight schedules, the Learjet 35A made practical sense. It could cruise at high altitude above most commercial traffic and weather, cutting travel time dramatically compared to buses or commercial flights, something essential when a band needs to play a show in one city and be in a completely different time zone by the next night. The 35A had a reputation as a workhorse rather than a luxury symbol. Its cabin was functional, not opulent, built for efficiency and reliability rather than to impress. That's part of what kept the price manageable. Unlike wide-body jets with custom interiors costing millions in upgrades alone, the 35A's straightforward cabin layout meant celebrities like Neil could own genuine private jet capability without the extravagant price tag associated with larger aircraft favored by A-list actors or business moguls. Motley Crue's touring lifestyle in the 1980s was already infamous for its chaos, and having quick, flexible access to private air travel fit right into that world. The Learjet 35A gave Neil freedom and speed without demanding the kind of budget that would have been out of reach even during the band's most successful years, proving that even in an era known for over-the-top rock star spending, some choices were still grounded in practicality. Angelina Jolie, Cirrus SR-22. Angelina Jolie, much like Brad Pitt, gravitated toward the Cirrus SR-22, a single-engine aircraft that stands in sharp contrast to the massive private jets typically associated with A-list movie stars. The Cirrus SR-22 usually costs between $700,000 and $1.2 million depending on the year and equipment package, positioning it as one of the more attainable aircraft in high-end private aviation, especially compared to the twin-engine business jets owned by many of her Hollywood peers. What makes the SR-22 particularly notable is its design philosophy. Cirrus built the aircraft around safety and simplicity, equipping it with the same whole airframe parachute recovery system found in Pitt's model, allowing the entire aircraft to descend safely under canopy in the event of a serious in-flight emergency. This single feature has made Cirrus aircraft some of the statistically safest single-engine planes in general aviation. For a public figure balancing an intensely scrutinized personal life with a desire for genuine independence, an aircraft she could learn to fly herself offered something rare: real autonomy, away from drivers, security teams, and scheduled commercial flights. Jolie has spoken about pursuing her pilot's license as a way to gain a skill entirely separate from acting, something rooted in discipline and self-reliance rather than fame or performance. The SR-22 was a natural fit for that goal. It's widely regarded as one of the best aircraft for newer private pilots, with an intuitive glass cockpit, modern digital displays, and forgiving handling characteristics compared to more complex twin-engine jets that demand years of training. Unlike the large executive jets favored by many in her industry, the SR-22 typically seats 4, has a range of roughly 1,000 miles, and is designed primarily for personal use rather than transporting large entourages or staff. For Jolie, the appeal wasn't about matching the size of jets owned by other celebrities. It was about ownership in the most literal sense, being capable of getting into the cockpit and flying the aircraft herself, something money alone can't buy without genuine skill and hours of training behind it. Greg Biffle, Cessna Citation II. Closing out this list is NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, whose choice of aircraft reflects both his career earnings and his practical, no-nonsense mindset. Biffle owns a Cessna Citation II, a light business jet that has remained one of the most popular and cost-effective jets in private aviation since it first entered production in the late 1970s, with well over 1,000 units built across its production run. The Citation II typically sells on the used market for anywhere between $700,000 and $1.5 million, depending on avionics upgrades and total flight hours, making it significantly more affordable than the larger Citation X or Gulfstream models favored by wealthier athletes and executives in other sports. Cessna built thousands of these aircraft over the decades, which keeps parts, maintenance, and pilot training costs lower than more exotic or limited production jets, a major factor for anyone looking to own a jet without an entire aviation department behind them. For a NASCAR driver, the appeal is obvious. The racing season demands constant travel between tracks scattered across the country, often with only days between events. A private jet like the Citation II allows a driver like Biffle to fly directly into smaller regional airports near racetracks, skipping the long drives and commercial layovers that would eat into recovery time between competitions, time that matters immensely in a sport built around split-second reflexes. The Citation II typically seats around 8 passengers and has a range of close to 1,100 200 miles, giving it enough capability to handle most cross-country hops common on the NASCAR circuit without needing to refuel constantly. It's not flashy, and it's not meant to be. It's built for reliability and consistency, values that mirror exactly what a professional driver needs from every piece of equipment in their life, on the track and off it, proving once again that smart money in the racing world doesn't always chase the biggest jet on the tarmac.